I think that the media has come a long way in how they showcase these stories in the media. So, in the early 2000s and even in the 2000, yeah, the early 2000s into the teens, we were seeing all the terrible headlines of Britney shaving her head and all of those
Mhm.
quintessential headlines that we all got used to that weren't helpful. But in the last at least 5 years, we see all these celebrities recovering out loud, and even some old timers, Jamie Lee Curtis, Sir Anthony Hopkins, Elton John, Rob Lowe, I almost said Tony Stark, Robert Downey Jr. But we see celebrities at all lengths of recovery, recovering out loud. And I think that is for the greater good. And the good stories are now about how they've turned their life around and turned
Mhm.
other lives around. So progress has been made, but articles like the one that came out a couple of weeks ago, it's not doing us any good.
Welcome to Amy Liz Harrison's podcast, Eternally Amy, a mum of eight's journey from jail to joy, a Gen Xer who overcame her struggle with alcohol to become a best-selling author and mental health advocate. She shares stories of hope and offers ideas for others struggling with mental health challenges. One thing is for sure, you'll leave with something to chew on. And now, here's your host, Amy Liz Harrison.
Well, greetings, compadres. Greetings to you. Today, I won't say that we are retiring the Boozeless Book Club. We're going to do it on an as-needed basis. When we decide that, oh, hey, here's a book that we want to read or have heard about or seems interesting, we'll pull it off the shelf, okay? And we're going to do the very same thing with the Boozeless Book Club episodes. We won't read a book a month. I feel like perhaps that was a bit ambitious
It's
for us,
aggressive. Yeah, it was
right?
aggressive.
It was a bit aggressive. All right. So today I have Elise Bryson back on, my beloved friend, and she is the founder and CEO of the Sober Curator, as well as many other things. She's basically a Renaissance woman. And yeah, she is also Kevin Bacon of recovery and other entities. She just has this way of knowing people who are associated with people who have best friends who know her through their mechanic's son's roommate, one of those things.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm not going to spend any more time than that introducing her because she's a gem. You love her. You know her from so many other things too. So welcome back, Elise. Welcome back.
Thanks,
Welcome
Amy.
back.
Welcome back.
And today, well, we're going to talk about like two things. This kind of like a two-parter. So we're calling this episode, or I'm calling this episode, the Sober Jibber Jabber, because my hope is that we won't limit ourselves to a boozeless book club selection. Elise and I will often pop onto Eternally Amy or another podcast, and we will just talk about things recovery related, recovery adjacent, perhaps a little pepper in of recovery when we're talking about pop culture. I mean, a variety of things. So I'm just going to call it the Sober Jibber Jabber. And what we're going to do is start today by talking about New York Fashion Week. And so I'm going to hand the floor to Elise because I don't really know a ton about this. And I'm here to tell you that I'm going to go to it and I'm going to participate. So
Yeah, you're not just attending it, Amy. You are walking in New York Fashion Week. Like,
I'm walking.
that's kind of a big deal.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
guess it
I
is.
am not. I am not. I'm going to be cheering you on from the front row, but let me tell you all about it.
Yeah.
So this is really exciting. It is New York Fashion Week, powered by Break Free. The Break Free Foundation is formed by a dear friend and now publisher of the Sober Curator. Her name is Alexandra Nyman. And I have been supporting this show, or the Sober Curator has been supporting this show since its first show, which was back in the February of 2022. Trying to do the math. I don't know about you guys, but after COVID, math is like hard. So she's done 5 shows so far. They happen in February and in September, inside of the week that is dedicated to New York Fashion Week. And this is really an indie designer type of show. So what's cool about it is all of the different designers that are showing their collections at this show, they somehow way, shape, or form, they touch the recovery and mental health community. So they might represent mental health in general, eating disorders, addictions, different things, neurodiversity, different things like that. We also, the other cool thing about it is it's got real people walking in the show, not just models. Not that you're not a model, Amy. I could see you as both. But that kind of makes it really cool. And then what's even cooler is the Break Free Foundation is an official 501c3. So the net proceeds of these shows go to help put people in treatment centers that otherwise might not be able to afford to go or might not have the right insurance, etc. So this one is happening on Monday, February 12th at the Prince George Ballroom, which I've heard and seen pictures that it's going to be fabulous. There are multiple designers that are participating in this show, including a handbag designer I'm really excited to see in real life. And it's just really, it's a fun night. People show up. There are mocktails, alcohol-free cocktails. There are red carpet interviews. In September, there were definitely some celebrities that you might recognize from like the Real Housewives of New Jersey. Different people show up. It's basically an event for networking with designers, creatives, and industry experts. The doors open at 6 and the show starts at 7. And it's just really fun to be part of. And Alex herself is also one of the designers. So not only does she produce this whole show and manage her nonprofit, but she's also a designer herself. Some of the other designers that are going to be showing in February are Chabliss Designs, Lady Cat, which is Alex's line, Big Man Culture, Me by Lee Boutique, Darmex Design, and At Night We Pray. And there could be a couple more that end up joining, but that is what it will be right now. So if you are in the greater New York area or you find yourself in New York, you should definitely come to this event because it is stylish, it is fun, it is a bunch of people recovering out loud. And you'll get to see Amy rock the runway, which I am super excited about. Plus, we have 2 other sober curators, Kate Vitella and Harley Skorpinski. They both cover the fashion coverage on the Sober Curator because, for many of us, we loved getting ready to go out and get drunk. We pre-funked, we did all those things. So now we can still love fashion. We can still love getting ready to go out. We can get ready for life and feel good about it. And when you feel good about what you're wearing, it helps just feel good in all those other areas. So I'm really excited for this partnership with the Break Free Foundation. It all happened because Alex is not only a sober curator, but she's also taking over as publisher. And what that means, we have the press release go out this week. What that means is she's going to take over the day-to-day nuts and bolts of the website. So managing the back end, managing all the sober curators. We currently have 31 volunteer sober curators, mainly in the United States, but we have one in Canada, one in Mexico, and one in the UK. So I can totally say that we're international. And so she'll be taking over all of that along with the social media. So I can go and focus on some bigger thinking projects and figure out how to take the Sober Curator to the next level or levels, if you will. So does that answer all your questions, Amy?
Okay, so first of all, thank you. I think it does. One thing though, I was wondering about is, could you quickly just give a little, just a little snippet of what the Sober Curator is for those people who maybe live under a rock and may not know.
Under a rock. So those of you that have been under a rock, welcome from underneath. Just kidding. The Sober Curator is an online lifestyle publication. I like to refer to it as a magazine, but it is not in printed form that you might be used to. It is purely a website. But when you go to it and you see the different departments or the different channels in the site, you will see how it really takes on that magazine vibe. And I used to be in the magazine business, so it was near and dear to my heart to launch something that was really geared towards the person in recovery that has already chosen this as a lifestyle. They're in it for the long term, and they want to be educated and entertained and motivated and inspired. We do get a lot of newcomers or people in early sobriety or even sober curious people to the site. We also get a lot of people to the site that are coming because a loved one, a friend, or a family member is in recovery or needs to be in recovery. But really the mission of the Sober Curator is to show how much fun that life can be after you put the plug in the jug. So we do movie reviews, TV reviews, book reviews, podcast reviews. We have sober horoscope, sober tarot card reading. We've got the sober fashion column. We feature sober business owners. We have feature all different types of sober merchandise, whether it's one day at a time apparel or rehab studios apparel and jewelry. And actually, we're partnering with rehab studios and making a custom walk your talk, which is the name of our fashion column, bracelet that'll go inside the swag bags at New York Fashion Week.
Ding, ding. I love it so much. Also worthy of note is I do have books that, should they fit inside the swag bags, I will also be donating for the swag bags if that works out. I'm not sure. I mean, there could be so much swag already in the bags that I don't get to do that, in which case it's fine. But I have that ready to go, and I'm excited about that. So we can talk about that later. But I also will let you know, back to the actual break-free walking the catwalk. Is that what they call it? Is that the term?
Yes.
Okay. I'd like to point out, and if you are listening, I'm currently holding up a pair of Clark's sensible heels. I'm going to call them heels.
Nude pump.
It's a nude pump that looks like it is straight out of, I don't know, maybe like the movie Working Girl. I'm not sure.
You're giving off those vibes. A little 9 to 5 coming at you.
A little 9 to 5. Yeah. And it is a sensible kitten heel. I'm going to say it's maybe 2 inches high. Maybe. Right?
Did you get those just to walk in for the show?
Yes, I did. Because my other heels, if I have to bring heels, first of all, and walk and not fall, that's a whole thing. But my other heels are like those wedges or platforms or things that would be a safer choice for my ankles. And so this will be interesting. We'll see how it goes. But it is a Clark's pump. So I feel like that has potential for being something that a 47-year-old who has never walked a catwalk could possibly be wearing and not have some kind of an osteoporosis type moment. So that's my goal.
Now, I used to rock heels like 24/7. Like I would have even worn heels to the gym if I could have. In my 20s and 30s, I swore I would never give up my heels. I was like, you are crazy. And I'm only 5'4" on a good day. I'm probably actually 5'3", but I think 5'4" sounds better. But in heels, I can be 5'7", even 5'8" on a really crazy day. And even before the pandemic hit, I had noticed that after turning 40, maybe it was closer to 45. I'm not sure, but somewhere in there, all of a sudden I was wearing less heels. And then the pandemic happened. And now my heels, all of them they have literally like dust on them. Like I think that some of them literally need to be dusted. I was even noticing that the other day because And I can't believe it now to look back on that girl who swore she would wear heels till the end of time, that
Yeah.
I am now also a Clark's girl. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I have a similar background, and I took it a step further. I'm going to just tell you right now that most of my heels back in the day came from like Ross Dress for Less, not throwing shade on Ross, but saying that I wanted to have a lot of different colors and, you know, some of the ones that were a little bit bedazzled and all of that. And that was kind of like the era that I was in when I was wearing said heels. And most of the heels that I had actually had like chunks out of them on the right shoe because I'd be driving in the heels. And so like the up and down of pressing the accelerator would actually damage the heel a little bit.
Oh, interesting.
I don't know. I can't speak to the quality of the brands that I was selecting from Ross Dress for Less, but yeah, I had quite a fair few. And then a few years ago, I had foot surgery on one foot and then foot surgery on the other foot about a year and a half later. And so heels now for me, you know, I just have to reacquaint myself with them, and we'll see how it goes. I'm sure it'll be interesting and fun. But I also want to say, in terms of break free, first of all, I love that basically everything that you can do as a non-sober person, with a few exceptions, okay, you can find an alternative as a sober person. And I love that. I think that is beautiful. So I think that, you know, it is such an incredible thing that you can take your talents, your hobbies, your interests that you used to do, or perhaps that, you know, is a world that's generally not looked on or looked upon as a sober activity per se, that you can do things sober. And might I say, for me personally, I can do a lot more sober than I ever could when I was drinking. So
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
it opened a big world for me. And also, if you are listening and not watching, I'm holding up my Funko doppelganger doll that Elise made me as a sober curator. And Elise has hers that she is currently showing as well. And these little babes, these Golden Girl Funkos, will be accompanying us to New York. So that'll be
I kind of think we need to take them around the city and do photo shoots with them. What do you think?
it's obviously happening. Yeah. I mean,
Golden Girls Gone Wild. It'll be crazy. In our
it'll be great.
Clarks. In our Clarks. It'll be
And our
fantastic.
Clarks. And the final question I have about Break Free is, am I going to get a Zoolander moment where, you know, I get to the end of this catwalk and then I
You
don't know
are.
what to do, and
You
so I
are.
can only turn right, no left, and I'll just have to flash La Tigra or one of those looks that Ben Stiller gives that are essentially the same look.
Yep. Yeah. So yeah, you'll get to one wherever. I don't know how the runway will be set up. I've seen it done in all kinds of ways. I've seen them be in a circle, in a straight line, into this, into that. But you will ultimately get to where there's this like where all the photographers are for the money shot, right? And Getty Images will be there among a lot of other photographs. And I don't want to freak you out, Amy, but the pictures from this show are used to promote the next show. And Alex has the hookup because she gets billboards in Times Square. Yeah, I don't know how she does it. She is a wizard at connecting and networking, and she gets them donated. It's incredible. I mean, it's obviously for a good cause, but so that picture, it's that money shot. It could live on and on and on and on. So if you need to practice, I think you definitely practice with your girls. I think they will enjoy practicing with you. But yeah, you got to think about that one pose, to strike at the end, and you could practice as much as you want and think you know the right one, but I think it'll also depend on what you're wearing, which you won't know till the day you get there, I don't think. So,
Wonderful.
but what I can tell you is Alex dresses you for you. She'll make something now knowing it's you. And she will try to although she doesn't know you well, but she will make it. It'll be great. Her stuff is eclectic and different and fun and charming. And then TBD if you'll end up walking for any of the other designers, but you'll definitely be walking for her. But yeah, that money shot, girl, you're gonna have to, not only you're gonna have to walk and not fall, but you're gonna have to like lay on the plane, so to speak.
This is yeah, for those of you who know me well, you know this is just hysterical for me. Like I am all about getting comfortable with doing uncomfortable things, and so this is really one of those examples in my life. I just think this is goofy, but here's the thing. I will go to any lengths. That's what I said when I got sober. And
You're
so
just being of service, Amy. You're just being of
this
service.
is
And
what it is.
did
This
you
is
think
what it
when you got sober that you would one day be in your teen years of sobriety and walking in New York Fashion Week?
No, I didn't. I never would have thought that.
I think the promises are coming true, my friend.
I think they're coming true. And you know what else is coming true is the fact that I'm like bringing 4 different sets of Spanx and all kinds of I was making jokes on this one email thread that we had going about this whole thing, and it was like clearly the other ladies on the thread were like yeah, I don't know if that's a joke, or I don't know, like I don't know this girl, so I don't know if she just kind of has a problem or like what. It was kind of like maybe it was my delivery, it wasn't hitting, you know what I'm saying? It was kind of like the fall flat, which is fine, I'm fine with that. But then Elise later had emailed me a couple of weeks later and was like, hey, can you resend your measurements to Alex? And I was like, sure, but I'll tell you what I won't include is all my jokes about like my breastfeeding boobs and all that. And like,
I like the jokes
I'll
about
admit
the
that.
pasties. I was entertained.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I
Oh,
was
good.
definitely entertained.
Good. So anyway, Elise, Alex, me, my Clarks, and Harley and Kate will
Yes.
be
Yes. And if you want to see what this is all about, you can go over to the sobercurator.com and find the Walk Your Talk column or section within the site. And you will find videos and pictures and stories of past shows, past designers. It's super fun. It's totally a legit fashion show. And it's a real fun night for a good cause.
I love it. All right. Well, thanks so much, Elise. And I can't wait. This will be good. We always have a good time no matter what we do. And we always have wonderfully fun and entertaining stories when we get back. So that'll be
Always. You and I always seem to get ourselves in some kind of silly situation.
we definitely do. And so speaking of silly situations, we were in Las Vegas in November for a book conference, and we did lots of fun and entertaining things there, like visiting the Sphere and almost
Can we talk about that for a minute?
Yeah, of course.
So the other night I was watching TV and an ad, a TV commercial ad came on the screen for the Sphere. And I would have called you, but it was like probably like midnight or 1 o'clock. Although you are often up at that time. I have texted you at that time and gotten a response, but I was trying to be polite. So I tried to do that once in a while. And this commercial came on. First of all, it was deceiving. It made the auditorium look not as steep as you and I both know it was. I mean, we got into that auditorium and Amy basically turned white, like she is a ghost, and was asking where the seat belts were to get buckled into her seat because she was afraid she was going to topple over. This thing is steep. True. So if you are scared of heights, we do not recommend the Sphere in Las Vegas under any circumstances. I can't think of anything that could happen that would get me to go back there.
Me either.
Unless there was a guarantee that I could be at the very front row, bottom level that is not that high. That
like
would be
on the ground.
Like on the ground, basically. That's the only way you could get me there.
Agreed. And I will here's what I have to add to that. There was a man who came in from the very top level and was making his way down to his seat and was so terrified that he actually just stopped at our row and sat right next to us and was like, my seat's down there, but I can't. I'm out. I can't. This is as far as
like, do you remember how many drunk people that we thought were going to lose their lives just trying to navigate to their seats?
it was terrifying.
And we weren't even going for a concert. Like, I can see maybe going there for a concert again if you're on a lower level, but we
Right.
just went there for the weird film that they show. That was, quite honestly, it was beautiful at times, but
Mhm.
also a little depressing. I'm not gonna lie, I was a little
Yes.
depressed. A
Yeah.
little depressed.
Yeah, nothing like shaming you for being
Ruining the earth. Yeah,
you
ruining the
for
earth.
ruining the earth in various ways, and the movie was about that. And so, which we already knew we were doing anyway. So yeah, it was kind of just like, rubbing salt in a wound. But anyway, rewinding to here's my smooth transition. When I mentioned the book conference, unfortunately, I sidetracked us completely, which never, ever,
Oh,
ever.
sorry. That only happens all the time. This is the jibber jabber part of this episode. You're welcome to our rabbit
Right.
hole.
Okay, so Scooby-Doo, like time warp, back to when we're talking about the 20 books conference, which I have to quit calling it 20 books. It has a new name now. It's called Author Nation, but I'm just old school and it takes me a while to get up with the current words and terms. Sorry. So, at any rate, what I was talking about is about like books, right? So we read Matthew Perry's memoir last year. Apparently, I thought it was like in the fall. I had very little recollection of the fact that we actually had a blast talking about his memoir because we dressed up as the Friends characters. And it was like I got a sudden case of amnesia. And I remember doing that, but I thought it was attached to another podcast episode. This is an overshare. The point is, we wanted to quickly take a few minutes and loop back. Well, not a few minutes, I mean, some time to loop back and talk about Matthew Perry and the fact that unfortunately he has passed now and he was still alive back when we did that episode. And so, yeah, so my timing was way off. I mean, I don't know. The roll of toilet paper on the time machine just gets faster and faster. I can't explain it. Like, and then it's gone. So I have a very bad sense of time, apparently. But so when we read the memoir, we unpacked so many themes about that book and about our obsession and our love for the show Friends, and about all of the commentary, of course, that his cast members talked about in terms of Matthew's addiction. And so then he passed. And then later, we get, informed by Hollywood and different news agencies that it was found that he had ketamine in his system when the toxicology reports came back. And then there was a lot of drama and upheaval around that. So we just wanted to kind of bring it up and loop back and talk about it a little bit. And so, Elise, I was wondering if you could kind of just share what your current thoughts are on that.
Yes, I'd be happy to. So how I found out that Matthew Perry passed was interesting in and of itself. I was in New York, and Katie Mack, who is the founder of the Fucking Sober, the First 90 Days podcast. You can read about it on the Sober Curator, season one, Wanna Webby. Mac is very talented, and she had written, produced, and was starring in her own off-Broadway production called #Ugly Cry. And it was about losing an ex-boyfriend who was murdered on a vacation in Mexico. and what grief looks like in a modern day era and how grief intertwines with social media. Not only how you can go back and look at videos and pictures of someone that's no longer here, and that's part of the grieving process, but also how you grieve publicly in what you post after you've lost someone. And what was interesting about her show is that it was an interactive show. So she actually encouraged people in the audience to have their phones out, have their Instagram app open, because she was going to have you interact with her Instagram account during the show. So it was during the show, we were maybe a half an hour into the show, and she had a projector and a screen, and she was part of the show. She was showing her Instagram feed, and she had just pulled it up, and you could see Matthew Perry had died. And at first I was like, is this part of the show? Like, that's dark. But then my phone started blowing up of everybody like, did you see the news? Did you see the news? Did you see the news? And so I didn't look at any of it until we got out of the show. The show is fantastic, by the way. If it makes it to a city near you, I highly recommend going and seeing it. And so that's how I found out. But the upside was I was sitting with like 10 other sober curators. So I was in the middle of my sober community when we found out that we lost someone from our sober community. Quite sad. So then fast forward to weeks after his passing, when the ketamine story comes out, and there's the whole thing about he must have been abusing it because his last official appointment was a week and a half before, and it doesn't stay in your system that long. And so he must have been abusing it. And that's how what happened, whatever that storyline was. And I don't know a lot about ketamine, to be honest. I just don't know a lot about it, and it's not something that I'm interested in knowing a lot about. Because when I start thinking about drugs, I kind of want to do them. So it's just better for me to kind of ignore them in general. And so I didn't pay too much attention to that storyline. Nor did I think that his passing, whether it was an overdose, an unintentional overdose, I don't, doesn't sound like it was on purpose, but like, people die in the recovery community all the time. I've, with over almost 18 years under my belt, one day at a time, like, this happens a lot, and I never get used to it. It's really hard when it's somebody that I know. But we all felt like we knew Matthew Perry. I have watched every Friends episode at least 5 times. Like, I would be a good trivia partner at a Friends trivia night. I would be good. I even have a set of the cardboard cutouts from one of the early seasons of all the characters. I mean, that's a hardcore. I have all the Funkos of them. That can't be a surprise to anyone.
Right.
So I was a really big fan of his work on that show. He was okay in the few other movies that he was in, but I remember following his journey because it was in the headlines before I got sober myself too. So it was definitely something that I paid attention to. And but my most recent thing that I got very upset about happened about 2 weeks ago. We'll call it the beginning of January, or dry January, if you will. Apparently that's what January is called now, although I just think every month can be dry. And I can't remember if it was People or USA Today, or I don't know which one of the publications came out. But basically the cover story was that he had been using the whole time he was on his book tour. He had been not sober for however long. He was abusive physically and mentally, and verbally, to an old girlfriend, like basically dragging his name through the mud. And I got really upset. Number one, he's not here to defend himself. So what good does that do? Number two, all that storyline does, besides being clickbait, is continue to stigmatize the recovery community and be like, oh, those addicts, those alcoholics, they're always lying, they're always cheating, they're always stealing, they're never going to get better. And I think, when we read his book, I think I remember in the book, Amy, that he talks about, like, he went to 6,000 AA meetings, and he went to 15 treatment centers and spent over $6 million trying to get this thing. And I have to believe in all of that he helped a number of people, because I can only speak for myself and my experience. But when I'm sitting in a church basement, the person that I usually learn the most from, or I'm the most moved by, is someone that is just back from a relapse, or it's their first time getting sober. And the ones that come in and are actually drunk or high when they're in the meeting, my heart breaks for them the most, because that's a certain kind of hell to go sit in a meeting about not using when you are like that's just a whole nother level of hell. And so I don't know what good dragging his name through the mud does. And I'm not endorsing that whatever he did or didn't do to whatever ex-girlfriend was or wasn't okay. But he's not here to defend himself. And so why didn't that come out before? That bothered me. But really, it's just that it continues to stigmatize the narrative. And the fact of the matter is, yes, not everybody gets sober. Yes, not everybody stays sober. It's super hard. It takes a lot of people, a lot of tries. It's rare that somebody can do it the first time. You and I are rare, like, you know. But if you, when somebody asked me if I was a chronic relapser, no, I wasn't. The first time I went through treatment and did all the things that I've done, I haven't had relapse be part of my story. However, during the drinking years, the 12, 14 years I was drinking and drugging, I swore off drinking and drugging and relapsed more times than I could possibly count. I was always swearing I was done, and then I would be back at it the next day or 3 days later or a week later. So in a sense, relapse was part of my story too, if you look at it in that different way. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I got really upset, and I wrote an article and I put it up on the site and I put it out on social media, and I got some women coming after me on Instagram, which is fine. Everybody has a right to their opinion, and maybe they didn't love what I wrote or how I wrote it or my approach. I think they thought I was trying to be clickbait, and I was like, no, my whole point is this is clickbait and I don't like it. And then it was really hard, if I'm being honest, because then I wanted to go and look at their profiles and be like, well, how much sober time do they have? I'll show them. Okay, that's not the right attitude. That's ego, right? So I just took the high road and either responded politely or didn't respond at all. But it does bother me. I think I'm sorry, I'm just rambling here, but I think that the media has come a long way in how they showcase these stories in the media. So, you know, in the early 2000s and even in the the early 2000s into the teens, we were seeing all the terrible headlines of Britney shaving her head and all of those quintessential headlines that we all got used to that weren't helpful. But in the last at least 5 years, we see all these celebrities recovering out loud, and even some old timers, Jamie Lee Curtis, Sir Anthony Hopkins, Elton John, Rob Lowe, I almost said Tony Stark, Robert Downey Jr. But you know, so we see celebrities at all lengths of recovering out loud. And I think that is for the greater good. And the good stories are now about how they've turned their life around and turned other lives around. So progress has been made, but articles like the one that came out a couple of weeks ago, it's not doing us any good.
I couldn't agree more with everything that you said. And so I relapsed right after my first treatment center. I relapsed immediately when I got to the Orange County airport. And my whole premise for that was, first of all, I did not own that. I did not make known to my innermost self that I'm going to call it an alcoholic. That's the word that I use. That I did not believe that I was one. I kind of thought I was, but I didn't tell anybody because I did not want that label. And for some reason, that label was very important to me. It had a lot of negative connotation to it, which is, I think, the reason also nowadays we use other additional terms. Some people like substance use disorder, and which is, it's all great. I'm here for it. I'm here for whatever you want to say. But in those 2 weeks between the time when I took that first drink after treatment and I got my DUI, I mean, that whole 2-week period, for me personally, I was shocked how quickly I personally was right back to exactly where I was before I left for treatment the first time, physically, emotionally, mentally, and definitely spiritually. For me, I just became completely sucked into the spiral of my perception was way off. I mean, I had all the crazy thinking back. I definitely I had the hangover shits. I had all of that stuff back. And within 2 weeks I got that DUI. And so the power to me that alcohol had over me was finally revealing itself. I finally surrendered when I was laying in jail that night. And so when I think about, and I actually feel a little bit badly that my first thought about Matthew Perry in October, when I heard that he passed, I was kind of like, yeah, unfortunately, I bet it has something to do with his addiction at some level. That was my first thought. And I actually mentioned that to a friend at the time. And this friend was kind of like, no, he was sober. And I'm like, no, I know. Yeah. But also, I know that people do relapse and maybe it's a possibility. I'm not sure. But I don't know. We're just talking about it. And at the time I felt very kind of like, maybe I shouldn't have even said anything. But the point is, after sitting in, 12-step rooms for going on 13 years now, relapse is pretty much something I hear of at every meeting. Either somebody who has just returned from a relapse, somebody who is afraid of relapse, somebody who's loosely connected to somebody who's relapsed. I mean, somebody who's trying to avoid a relapse. And so it's a very normal part of addiction as far as I personally understand it. And some people will say, relapse is part of recovery. And other people will say, well, no, it doesn't necessarily have to be. Well, I mean, I personally think relapse is a part of recovery in terms of you're going to hear about it one way or another because enough people suffer a relapse or multiple relapses that it's kind of mentioned a lot. And so I was very used to that concept. And I think that, for me, the whole idea of like, if you come into a 12-step community or a 12-step meeting, we have this phrase, we don't shoot our wounded. And so what that means is if you come back from a relapse and you are this broken person, already the fact that you've made it back from a relapse and are sitting in a chair, that's a miracle, in my opinion, in and of itself. But if you're going to tell us what happened prior to picking up that drink, prior to making the sober choice to pick up a drink, that is nothing but helpful for me. And I certainly have compassion for you because it's like, that bridge is made, that empathy, because I know that if my thinking takes me down that pathway where I think a drink sounds like it could be a solution, I mean, that could be me sitting there just as well as it could be somebody else. And so for me, it's very normal. Whereas I realize, and I saw it on the Megyn Kelly show too, it's like, for a lot of people, it means, if that person wasn't sober when they died and they said they were, now they've lost credibility. I don't think so at all. I mean, that didn't even cross my mind. And when I had originally told my friend in October when he passed, I wonder if it had something to do with the relapse or maybe he wasn't sober, it was out of empathy. It wasn't out of judgment or any kind of a shame perspective. It was like, shoot, we've lost another one. And I hope it didn't have anything to do with his addiction. But, I don't know, Elise, I've sat through meetings where, I'm used to seeing certain people every single week. And then one week, there's a person who's not there and who was
It's
just there.
true. It's
And
true.
so it's kind of normal for us in a sad way.
It is. It is. And I would have to go back and listen to what we talked about when we read his book. But I think I remember discussing, if it didn't make it onto a podcast episode, it definitely made it in just a normal conversation that we have.
Yeah.
That there was an element of happy, joyous, and free that I didn't think he had found yet.
Mm-hmm.
And another way that we can call that is a dry drunk. So, because just not using drugs or alcohol is not going to fix the problem. Like, at
Right.
least not in my experience. In my experience, I stopped drinking and drugging. And 3 years into that, some things had gotten better. Like, I lost a little weight, I had a little more money in the bank, and my job was going pretty good. But everything else was still terrible because I was still doing all the same behaviors. I was still attracted to the same people. I was
Mm-hmm.
still basically lying, stealing, and cheating. And because if nothing changes, nothing changes. And so I had to really have hit a bottom in recovery in order to actually start living my life differently.
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't get the sense that he had gotten that full surrender and that full turning of the tides. That wasn't, I didn't necessarily look at his book as hopeful per se, but because of my affection towards him and his career and how he's struggled and tried so hard. Can you imagine what it's like to be that famous and try so hard to be getting sober and have that much wealth and people coming after you and never knowing if they like you for you or just you for your money and the temptation? I can't even imagine what it's like to be on that
Nightmare.
level. I really cannot imagine what it's like to be on that level. I never would want to be. I would never want that. I just don't think that's fun. And at the end of the day, he died alone in his hot tub. So no amount of money made him have a better life, right? And so I just, but I also understand how easy it can be. I'm going to use a really dumb example, so please, I hope you can entertain me with this rabbit hole. But I'm just talking about addiction in general. Yeah. And I made a decision to do a no spend for 2024. So I cannot buy things I don't need, and that is shoes, clothes, jewelry, home decor. Anything that I already own, something comparable, I cannot buy more of. If there's something that I have to buy because I really need it, like, I don't know, I'm going on a safari and I need, well, I don't need Clark's pumps. I already got like 10 pairs. But really, it's a no spend year. It's a no spend year, right? And it's not because of any reason other than I am compulsive and I spend my money on dumb stuff. And it's death by a thousand paper cuts.
Mm-hmm.
And so I never spend a lot, but I spend a lot, and it adds up. And so anyhow, I was 2 weeks in to January, hadn't bought a thing, but I have to tell you, at like an hour to midnight on New Year's Eve, I was adding to cart and buying things as fast as I could. Right. Okay. That's a sign. That's a sign. Right. And so then, and then about a weekend, I had to go to the mall and pick up a necklace that was getting repaired. And I had a friend come with me because I was like, I can't go in on my own. And the draw to the shoe department at Nordstrom's was strong. And I saw a pair of boots that if I hadn't been doing the no challenge, no spin challenge, I would have bought them in a second. And then I saw a jacket. It was a cream Zella puffer. It was beautiful. Would have bought that in a second. So right there, I saved like $200 by not buying things I would have normally just purchased, right?
Yeah.
So now I'm on week 2 and I go to Home Goods, and now Home Goods is also kind of like Nordstrom for me. It's like my Achilles heel. And so, but I have a legitimate reason to be there. I need candles and I need hangers. And those candles are on the approved list as long as I don't have 18 in storage, which I didn't, because they are self-care. I burn them all the time. They keep me relaxed. I know I don't seem relaxed, but this is me relaxed. And then hangers, we just never have enough hangers. We just don't have enough hangers. So I'm in there. I just get my 2 things and I know I just need to get in and get out. But then this thought occurs to me that I haven't gotten in all my steps for the day and it's raining outside. So it would probably be a good idea to just walk around the store, do a few laps, if you will,
Smart.
to get my steps in.
Right.
And just, just see what's there. I'm not going to buy anything, but just see what's there. Fortunately for me, I didn't see anything that I couldn't live without. So but if there had been some, I don't know, denim ottoman that I couldn't live without, I have to tell you, in that moment, I probably would not have been strong enough to resist it. But fortunately, there was nothing there. So then I get to that maze they have right before the
Oh,
checkout.
yes.
Yeah, that's where they get you.
I
Again,
know.
death by 1,000 paper cuts, or in my case, purchases.
Chumps.
So I'm navigating the maze of tchotchkes, and the line is deep, so then you're kind of stuck there surrounded by, and these people have figured it out. It's like they took what they do at Disneyland when you get off a ride into a gift shop. Now they've done that at Nordstrom Rack, they've done it at Home Goods, they do it at Sephora. Like, that's how they get you. Anyway, so I'm standing there still trying not to buy anything, and my eyes fall on this paperweight. It says prove them wrong. And I'm like, what a good thing I could get. It'll motivate me. I'm going to prove them wrong. I can go all year without buying something. And $7 and a bag of jelly beans went into my bag. Now, I don't actually have any paper that needs to be weighted down. So that's the first thing. Okay. The second thing is, I have counted that I have at least 4 paperweights here, and I have at least 3 at my actual office. So I did not need another paperweight because I already own, let's call it 7. Okay.
Okay.
And the irony that I bought a prove them wrong paperweight and broke my day count.
Yeah.
But it didn't occur to me. This is my point, is in one swipe, it was in my basket. I justified it. I tried to act like it wasn't a big deal. And I checked out. Well, it gets worse. It gets worse, Amy. I can't believe I'm confessing all of this. I don't know what you've done to me. So I leave Home Goods and I call Tamar. Tamar. She's another Sober Curator. And I think I actually called because I was going to confess. And maybe she could talk me into turning around and returning the paperweight. Yeah. But then I get on the phone and I tell her about the candles and I tell her about the hangers. And she's like, good for you. You did it. And so I was like, I know, right? I'm so proud of me. And I get home and I'm like, I'm just not going to tell anyone about the $7 paperweight. It's like it never happened because, again, it's motivation, right?
Right.
Again, I don't need to be motivated. I should have, like, saving money to take my mom to London should be motivation enough.
Right.
So then the next night I'm on the phone with a friend and he's being really vulnerable with me about a certain topic. And I'm feeling like I need to match his vulnerability. And the next thing you know, I'm confessing about my shopping relapse of $7 and how not only did I broke it on day 14, but I also then called someone and lied to their face. And then the next day at work, everybody around me, I told them. So I had to make amends to 9 people over a $7 paperweight. That I lied to them and that I had actually broken my day count. I am back on, let's see, doing the math. I'm on day 9.
Okay. Good.
Day 9. It's not day 22. It's a little sad. And I'm just using that really dumb example to show you how easy the mind of an addict will justify and take action before they can even think about what's happening.
Yes.
Like, it just happens. And that is what happens. Happens. I think another great example, if you remember the movie Flight with Denzel Washington, where he's in the hotel room the night before the big court case that's going to basically define his future. He has every reason to stay sober because he's almost across the finish line. And then, I'm sorry if you haven't watched this movie, plug your ears, but then he opens up the mini bar and just swipes. And he's off to the races. And that's how easy it is. So back to Matthew Perry. I'm done talking about Denzel Washington and paperweights, but he may have just had a 1 or 2 day slip. He may have been in chronic relapse the whole time. We will never know. Will never know. But that doesn't negate the years that he struggled and tried. And it doesn't negate the help that he did to other people that he sponsored or talked to, or he probably put a lot of people through treatment. Now they put it, he has the Matthew Perry Foundation that is helping people. So you cannot say he didn't change lives. He did. He did. So don't drag his name through the mud. Like, I can't.
No, I completely agree. And one thing I wanted to quickly say about the paperweight incident was that, I would have actually taken that whole thing a step further, and I would have scrounged up some papers and actually put those on my desk and then put the paperweight on top. So it made it look like I had a reason to get the paperweight. And you know what? That's what I used to do when I was drinking too. So I get all of that. Hashtag relatable. And about Matthew, I completely agree. I mean, it's almost like, here's the example that I want to bring up. It's like, you go into a church and then you find out later that the pastor is having an affair with the secretary or whatever. And then all of a sudden, everybody is totally incensed, and like everything that pastor ever said or did prior to that moment is now just deleted, right? Whereas the truth is that's not true. I mean, we read things all the time from people who are human, who have done things that are out of their character for whatever reason, whether it's addiction, whether it's, a lapse in judgment, whether it's, who knows, right? But it doesn't then therefore make that person a fundamental asshole, right? And that everything they ever did in life that was, quote, good, unquote, or made a difference in somebody's life is now, oh, that's canceled. That, I just don't understand all of this. Like, I mean, oh, well, 17 years ago when she used that word instead of that word, it means this about her today. It's like, I don't buy any of that. And I can't, because I can't change my past, right? And there are a lot of things that I look back on and I'm like, you know what? I don't regret that, but gosh, the me today probably would not have done that, because I would have known that I would have paid the price with my inner peace, right? But I was a different person then. So as I grow and hopefully grow and change and, keep like sowing the seeds and making deposits toward who I want to be and this sober person that I want to be, like, hopefully I do look different than I did back then. Hopefully so. And so I don't like any of this character assassination. And you're so right. I mean, he's not even here to say anything about it. So I agree. Wrong on so many levels, and I want to say, Matthew, may you rest in peace. And you know what? You tried. I mean, I've heard in many, many meetings, people who come back in and, somebody will say to them, well, your default is to drink. So I'm so glad you're here. Welcome back, right? Like, that's what they say, is like, for somebody who is an alcoholic, that was their coping mechanism, right? So the default would be to drink. So if you're not drinking today, like, that's a win. And I think that we're just too hard on each other in general and in this whole thing. Like, it's not an easy space to be in. And especially for a celebrity, as you pointed out, Elise. So I don't know. Any last thoughts on the whole matter? Because I completely agree with you. And I feel for Matthew, like those last few, lucid moments, or maybe he was, I mean, who knows?
No, I mean, I think we jibbed and we jabbed and we
Mhm.
jibber jabbered. Like, I think we nailed the topic of jibber jabber today. I think the world would be a better place if we all just gave everybody a little bit more grace.
Yeah.
And I too am not a fan of cancel culture.
Mm-hmm.
I do believe in holding people accountable though.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a difference. But I also know that I am a flawed human that makes mistakes on the regular.
Yeah.
And it would be a real bummer if my mistakes canceled out
Mm-hmm.
the good I think I've done. And one time I have some dates tattooed on my back. Kind of looks like a barcode, if I'm being honest. I was inspired because Angelina Jolie has the latitude and longitude lines of her kids tattooed on her back. So I was like, that's cool, but I'm not that outdoorsy, so I don't get latitude and longitude lines. Plus, mine would all be basically the same because I've only ever lived in Washington my whole life. And so I went with numbers. It's my mom's birthday, my dad's birthday, their wedding anniversary, my birthday, my sister's birthday, my son's birthday, and my sobriety date.
Like it.
And somebody was like, well, what happens if you relapse? And I was like, well, I will maybe put a line over it and scratch it out and write the new one on there. But it doesn't make that day less significant. I don't lose. I could go and get shit faced tonight.
Mhm.
I don't lose the 17 plus years that I have.
Right.
Now, but I do fundamentally have a problem with don't keep a day count if you're not really going to keep a day count. So you can't have a date and then slip and then keep the same date. Like that just mathematically doesn't make sense to me. But it does if you have a turning point, right? A turning point, a significant turning point. And maybe that's how some people justify that. I don't know. But for me, if I were to relapse, I would start over with a new date, but that wouldn't make my original date less significant because that date, regardless of the outcome, regardless of if I die sober or not,
Mhm.
that date did change the course of my life.
Right. Right. It's the day your journey began.
It is.
Right.
And I really, you and I are of the same cloth that I can really only do this whole life thing one day at a time. I
Right.
don't even know what I'm doing next Tuesday. I can't. People are like, do you want to plan a vacation 2 years from now? I'm like, are you insane? Like, I cannot even wrap my brain around making a commitment like that. I do have commitment issues. That's probably for another episode, Amy. But yeah, so we jabbered.
Yeah.
We talked about fashion, New York Fashion Week. Definitely check those things out over at the Sober Curator. We talked about Matthew Perry. If you haven't read his book, it's still worth a read. Or you can go and listen to our episodes and reviews about it also on the Sober Curator. So
Yeah.
it's been really great to be with you as usual. I love coming here every month with you.
Love you, long balls.
Love you,
All
long
right.
balls.
So if you're listening, just remember to be kind, rewind. Thank you for the honor of your time. Take what you like and leave the rest behind.
Thank you so much for listening to Eternally Amy, a mum of eight's journey from jail to joy. Amy Liz Harrison is a best-selling author, speaker, 12-step coach, meditation teacher, and recovery advocate. To find out more, please visit amylizharrison.com. You can keep up with Amy on all platforms by following @AmyLizHarrison. Please subscribe and review this podcast. It means so much to us if you do.